If you use wind strip trays, I would say my biggest complaint with these trays, and it's not big enough that I wouldn't use them, but my biggest complaint using these trays is the difficulty of getting the plugs out of the trays themselves. Because this is such hard plastic, you can't kind of scrunch it up like the crappy plastic ones. You're gonna have to stick your finger or something into this repetitively in order to get the plug out of its tray. And that's fine for the bigger ones. The 50s and the 72 is big enough that you can easily get your finger into there, but still you're gonna have to do that on an individual basis. And if you're doing 16 trays at a time, it becomes very time consuming because when these seedlings do grow, they do develop a good root base to a point where since they are inserting more mass within the soil plug, it is now expanding that soil plug that it's essentially stuck. So if there was a full tray here, I could probably flip the tray upside down and the plugs would not fall out. So it is something that you need to put some force to pop them up. The biggest issue is the 128. So as you get smaller, and there's little things you can buy for this, but it's easier just to use your fingers. The hole gets smaller and smaller. So you can see when you're pushing your finger into a hard edge plastic like this, and you do it hundreds of times, every time you do this, your finger becomes bloody because you're constantly pushing against the plastic and cutting yourself. But that's the only way that you can pop these plugs out. So to get around having bloody fingers and to get around doing this thousands of times when you're trying to plant everything all at once, I just did a simple wood hack. Simple in that hopefully it will work. Maybe not simple, straightforward making these things because it was a bit time consuming, but it's essentially just a 3/4 inch board with dowels that are cut to a certain length that when a tray goes on top of it, it pushes the plugs all at once. So you don't need to do it 50 times, you just need to do it once. But it's also at a dimension that it pushes the plug up where it's not too high where it falls out. It's not too low where you can't get your fingers in. It's at as good as length as we could predict, that it essentially pops them up high enough but not low enough that you can essentially just pull it and just throw it on the bed from there. So we did it for the 50, the 72, and the most difficult one is the 128 because not only is that hole smaller, but now you have to put everything all in line. This was all manually done. So it was difficult to kind of line everything up. So it took a good amount of time in the afternoon to make sure everything was lined up perfectly. So in this case, now I can pop up hundreds of plugs at once, where you're just going to now take the tray itself and just walk down the bed because the plugs are ready to be thrown out. So now you can just go up and down the bed itself and just throw the plugs onto the soil. So wind strips, very great, robust, will last forever. The difficulty is getting the plugs out. So if you have a little bit of a handy woodworking skill, this will certainly simplify popping the plugs for use.